We have, just get the terminology right.
Understood.
Unsupervised, supervised full self-driving, where there's a person in the car.
Elon Musk just lost the edge he thought was untouchable. And the moment it happened, the entire industry froze. A single line from BYD's CEO sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley.
There's competitors now ramping up, and as you're familiar with BYD, which is also on the West Coast, I think they're ramping up production of their electric vehicles. Warren Buffett owns 10% stake in that. Why do you laugh? BYD is trying to compete. Why do you laugh?
Have you seen their car?
I have seen their car, yes. In fact, at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, I saw their car.
No shouting, no spectacle, just a quiet announcement that felt like the opening shot of a new world order. This wasn't hype, and it wasn't a rumor. It was the kind of reveal that turns dominance into doubt and makes even Tesla's strongest fortress look fragile. So what exactly did BYD unleash? Why are Western leaders suddenly scrambling? And how close are we to seeing the auto industry flip overnight? The sentence that shook Silicon Valley. The CEO of BYD whispered a promise that sent a chill through Silicon Valley. BYD would accelerate production to a scale so vast it would redraw the map of the auto industry. The room froze. What looked like another corporate keynote suddenly felt like the unveiling of a new world order. Behind the chief executive officer, a screen flickered to life. On it pulsed the number that cracked Tesla's armor: 1,000 kilowatts. A single charger capable of feeding 400 kilometers of range in less time than it takes to order a coffee. The crowd gasped. Not because they expected it, but because they did not. The very idea that an electric vehicle could recharge at petrol speed tore apart the narrative that had protected Tesla for a decade. For Elon Musk, thousands of miles away, the news hit like a lightning strike. Superchargers had been Tesla's fortress, the promise that justified its price premium and bound its tribe together. Now, on a stage in Asia, a rival was quietly taking that fortress, brick by brick. Investors watching live feeds typed frantic notes. Engineers exchanged nervous glances. This was no product launch. It was a declaration of war, disguised as a line of calm, deliberate speech. But this wasn't about one launch. It was about years of silent preparation, the silent build-out. Long before the spotlight, BYD had been laying steel, pouring concrete, and hiring armies of engineers. The company never matched Tesla's flair for publicity, preferring quiet expansion to grandstanding. While competitors chased headlines about concept cars, BYD built factories that sprawled across provinces, trained an engineering corps numbering in the hundreds of thousands, and refined a vertically integrated supply chain that could weather shortages. The payoff came in the first half of 2025. In only 6 months, BYD sold more than 2.1 million new energy vehicles, a total that dwarfed every competitor. In June alone, more than 382,000 units rolled off its lines. It was not simply growth, it was domination. These figures were not anomalies of subsidies or short-term incentives. They reflected an industrial base that had reached critical mass. Where Western automakers trimmed their electric plans in the face of high costs, BYD surged forward. Its patience, its discipline, and its relentless scaling strategy bore fruit just as the global market tipped toward electrification. Tesla still captured attention with Cybertruck headlines and robotaxi teasers, but in raw volume, the center of gravity had shifted east. And then came the engine that rewrote the laws of efficiency. The engine that rewrote hybrids. When BYD unveiled its 5th-generation DMI hybrid system, even seasoned engineers blinked at the specifications. The heart of the technology was a 1.5-liter petrol engine paired with a powerful electric motor, tuned not for speed, but for ruthless efficiency. On paper, the petrol block produced only 99 horsepower. But combined with the electric motor, the package delivered flexibility for both city commutes and highway cruising. The true shock lay in the numbers. The engine achieved a thermal efficiency of 46.06%, surpassing Toyota's long-standing record and creeping toward Formula One territory. Most combustion engines waste more than half their fuel as heat. BYD's unit captured nearly half of that energy and turned it into usable motion. The result was a combined driving range of more than 2,000 kilometers on a single tank and charge. Equally radical was the philosophy. Traditional hybrids leaned on petrol with electric support. BYD flipped the script. The electric motor became the star, with petrol stepping in only when required. This inversion gave drivers a smoother, quieter experience, while squeezing every kilometer out of each drop of fuel. In markets where charging infrastructure remained patchy, such range promised liberation from anxiety. But efficiency means nothing if the battery becomes a bomb. If you've made it this far, you're clearly not just curious. You want the truth others won't tell you. So hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The blade that wouldn't burn. At the core of BYD's success stood its most distinctive innovation, the Blade battery. Instead of conventional bulky cells stacked into modules, the Blade employed long, narrow cells arranged side by side like sharpened steel. This architecture eliminated wasted space, increased energy density by roughly 50%, and doubled as structural reinforcement for the vehicle frame. Yet the real story was safety. In the brutal nail penetration test, where most lithium-ion packs would erupt in flames, BYD's Blade battery stayed cool and stable. No fire, no smoke, no thermal runaway. Built on lithium iron phosphate chemistry, the Blade rejected cobalt and nickel, the volatile metals that often led to overheating. The chemistry not only lowered costs, but also reduced geopolitical vulnerability tied to rare mineral supply chains. Durability was equally impressive. After 3,000 full charge cycles, the battery still retained 90% of its capacity. For the everyday driver, that meant fewer replacements, lower lifetime costs, and a car that aged more gracefully than its rivals. For the industry, it meant that safety and scale were no longer in conflict. With the Blade, BYD proved that mass adoption could be achieved without compromise. Consumers no longer had to choose between affordable cars and safe batteries. The company's design turned one of the industry's greatest weaknesses into a competitive weapon. And with the foundation secure, BYD gave its cars a new brain. The new brain. A car without intelligence is just metal and wheels. BYD knew that power alone would not win the future, so it unveiled its next leap, a fully centralized control system supported by die-pilot autonomy tiers. Unlike traditional vehicles packed with dozens of scattered control units, this architecture brought everything into one lightning-fast core. Engine, brakes, sensors, cameras, and radar were all unified under a single digital brain capable of reacting in milliseconds. The result was not just speed, but coordination. In heavy rain, the system could instantly switch from camera reliance to radar and ultrasonic sensors. In dense traffic, it predicted patterns before drivers even noticed them. And thanks to real-time data collection from millions of vehicles, the system improved with every trip. What once required expensive luxury vehicles could now be found in mass-market models. Even cars priced well under $20,000 were equipped with features like adaptive cruise control, lane assistance, and memory-based automatic parking. For Tesla, this was a bitter irony. Its greatest advantage had been software, the ability to push updates over the air and evolve cars long after purchase. Now, BYD was replicating the same playbook, but at a scale Tesla could not match. More cars on the road meant more data, and more data meant faster learning. In effect, BYD had created a feedback loop that turned its size into a software advantage. But smart cars need smart sockets, and BYD planned to own those too. Owning the plug. For decades, the petrol station symbolized freedom on the road. In the electric age, the charging station carries the same symbolic weight, and BYD understood that whoever controls the plug controls the journey. That is why it shocked the industry with a pledge to roll out a nationwide network of 1,000 kilowatt chargers. This was not a handful of showcase stations, but thousands of high-speed hubs capable of refueling cars in minutes, not hours. Tesla had long held the crown with its supercharger network, opening stations across continents and more recently granting other automakers access. Yet the moment BYD revealed chargers that doubled Tesla's peak output, the narrative changed. What once looked like visionary infrastructure now looked like yesterday's strategy. Instead of borrowing Tesla's sockets, BYD was building its own empire of plugs. The practical impact was enormous. Range anxiety, the lingering fear that an electric vehicle might leave drivers stranded, began to evaporate. If petrol stations took 5 minutes to fill a tank, BYD promised the same for electric vehicles. In consumer psychology, that erased the last major barrier to adoption. For investors, it signaled a company that was not content to sell cars, but determined to own the entire ecosystem of energy and mobility. And sockets were not the only invasion. BYD was moving into your house. The house gambit. Imagine finishing your commute, plugging in your car, and knowing that the same company also powers the lights in your kitchen and the refrigerator in your garage. That is the future BYD began to sketch with its battery box home storage systems. a direct rival to Tesla's famous Powerwall. These slim stackable units promised affordable, safe, and long-lasting storage for households that wanted to capture solar energy by day and release it at night. What made the battery box remarkable was not just its chemistry, based on stable lithium iron phosphate cells, but its accessibility. Families could install them without spending the fortune typically associated with home storage. Durability was guaranteed, with thousands of cycles supported before noticeable degradation. In other words, it was a household solution designed for scale, not just luxury showrooms. By moving into the home, BYD transformed from a car company into a lifestyle brand. It blurred the line between mobility and domestic energy, making the customer's entire environment part of its ecosystem. Tesla had once held that vision with its solar roofs and Powerwalls, but BYD's approach was faster and cheaper. Suddenly, the battle for customers was no longer just fought in dealerships. It was fought in living rooms. Then BYD went after the grid itself, Tesla's crown jewel. Grid wars? In energy, scale determines power. BYD stunned analysts when it announced utility-scale storage projects totaling 12.5 gigawatt-hours in Saudi Arabia. These were not small pilot programs. They were massive deployments intended to stabilize entire regional grids. The projects placed BYD shoulder to shoulder with Tesla in the lucrative market for battery energy storage systems, often shortened to BESS. Tesla had been the global leader in this space, installing vast arrays of megapacks in California, Australia, and Europe. Yet the entry of BYD into the same league threatened to erode that dominance. With vertically integrated manufacturing, BYD could build these systems cheaper and faster than almost any rival. Its blade battery technology, already proven safe and durable in vehicles, scaled up seamlessly to power plants. The implications were profound. No longer could BYD be dismissed as a car maker. It was now an energy giant with reach across vehicles, homes, and national grids. Each layer reinforced the others. Car sales generated data. Home batteries deepened loyalty, and grid projects built political influence. The company was constructing an empire of electrons that touched every part of modern life. But BYD's deadliest weapon wasn't scale or storage. It was price. Affordability as a weapon. When the BYD Seagull appeared with a sticker price under $10,000, the automotive world reeled. For years, electric vehicles had been framed as luxury items, symbols of wealth rather than tools for ordinary families. Suddenly, that barrier collapsed. Students, first-time buyers, and households with modest incomes could all consider going electric without wrecking their budgets. BYD had turned price into a weapon more disruptive than any new motor or sensor. The Seagull was not a stripped-down toy. It carried advanced safety systems, competent range for city use, and access to the same family of charging technology as higher-end BYD models. Other entry-level cars in the lineup followed the same philosophy: usable range, reliable batteries, and an ownership cost far below Western competitors. What Tesla had once promised, mass adoption through affordability, BYD delivered at scale. This was not charity. BYD understood that democratization of technology could entrench loyalty faster than premium branding. By placing advanced features within reach of millions, it created a customer base that would grow with the company for decades. In economic terms, it expanded the addressable market by an order of magnitude, pulling in buyers who never dreamed of owning an electric car. And BYD wasn't just cheap, it was smart at scale. Smarter at scale. Cheap technology is often assumed to be dumb technology, but BYD flipped that assumption on its head. The company deployed over-the-air upgrades across its entire lineup, from budget hatchbacks to flagship sedans. Features that once demanded a luxury badge, adaptive cruise control, lane keeping, and automated parking, could now appear in cars sold for a fraction of the cost. With DiPilot autonomy tiers, labeled 100, 300, and 600, BYD ensured that every model had a path to greater intelligence. The effect was transformative. Buyers did not see a disposable car. They saw a device that improved over time like a smartphone. Each update brought smoother braking, sharper navigation, or enhanced safety routines. Crucially, the cars fed data back into BYD's vast neural networks. With more than 2 million vehicles sold in half a year, the company collected an ocean of information each day. That data trained algorithms faster than Tesla's smaller fleet could match, turning size into intelligence. For consumers, this meant their inexpensive car could anticipate problems, avoid collisions, and operate more efficiently as the months passed. For BYD, it meant a self-reinforcing cycle. More cars created smarter software, which made the cars more attractive, which sold more units. In strategy circles, this was known as the flywheel effect, and BYD had spun it into motion on a global scale. But the killer blow wasn't in software, it was in culture. 5 minutes to full. Technology becomes culture when it changes habits. For over a century, drivers grew accustomed to filling their tanks in a few minutes at roadside stations. Electric cars threatened that rhythm with long waits at chargers, and consumer hesitation often stemmed from this disruption. BYD attacked the problem directly with its 1,000 kilowatt charging system. By promising 400 kilometers of range in 5 minutes, it erased the psychological barrier between electric and petrol. The cultural impact was immediate. Drivers no longer feared weekend trips or long commutes. The anxiety of, what if I cannot find a charger in time, dissolved. Gas stations, once icons of independence, looked increasingly obsolete as electric hubs spread across highways. Waiting 40 minutes became unacceptable when BYD offered a refuel in the same time it took to buy a coffee. The company reframed the conversation. Electric was not just cleaner, it was more convenient. For Tesla, the blow was painful. Its superchargers had been a crown jewel, the reason many buyers tolerated higher prices. Now those chargers seemed dated. The very habit Tesla had built, stop, wait, charge, was being rewritten by a rival with more aggressive infrastructure. Consumers measure freedom in minutes, not marketing campaigns, and BYD had handed them a new definition. And just when Tesla thought it could fight on pure EV ground, BYD used hybrids as its hinge. So now you see, this isn't just about cars. It's about everything that defines your daily life. If you want the full story, subscribe right now and share this video. Every click spreads the truth further, and every subscriber makes sure you're never left in the dark again. The hybrid hinge. Pure electrics dominate headlines, but in much of the world, weak grids and sparse chargers make adoption slow. BYD spotted this gap and doubled down with its 5th-generation DMI hybrids. By delivering over 2,000 kilometers of combined range, these vehicles solved the developing world adoption problem without waiting for governments to build infrastructure. Families in rural India, Latin America, or Southeast Asia could buy a car that offered electric driving in cities, but relied on petrol for the long, empty stretches between towns. This hybrid hinge strategy gave BYD a presence in markets Tesla could not touch. For Tesla, committed exclusively to pure EVs, there was no comparable product. While Elon Musk talked about robotaxis, BYD sold practical cars to millions who simply wanted reliability and freedom from fuel spikes. The hybrid system was not a compromise. It was a bridge, giving nations time to build out their electric grids while still cutting emissions. Economists noted that BYD's hybrids acted like a pressure valve for fragile grids. By shifting seamlessly between electric and petrol, they reduced strain on local infrastructure while still cutting emissions. This flexibility made governments more willing to approve incentives, effectively turning policy frameworks into silent allies for BYD's expansion. By controlling both ends of the spectrum, pure EVs in advanced cities and hybrids in transitional regions, BYD positioned itself as the brand for every stage of electrification. It was not just winning customers, it was shaping the trajectory of adoption worldwide. And that's when the global ripples began. Boardroom panic. In the glass towers of Detroit and Stuttgart, executives stared at spreadsheets that suddenly looked like death warrants. Ford, Mercedes, and General Motors had all scaled back their electric programs, citing thin margins, hesitant consumers, and the heavy capital needed to retool factories. Yet while they retreated, BYD surged forward with record sales, cheap models, and a portfolio that stretched from city runabouts to luxury sedans. The numbers were brutal. When an electric hatchback under $10,000 could deliver reliability and smart features, the 3-decade-old strategies of Western automakers looked broken. Some executives confessed privately that they no longer knew who their customer was. Were they competing for luxury buyers, mass-market commuters, or governments demanding fleet electrification? BYD's ability to serve all three at once shattered traditional segmentation models, leaving legacy automakers paralyzed between too many strategies and too little time. In meeting rooms, the panic was palpable. Analysts warned that BYD's pricing reset consumer expectations worldwide. No longer could companies justify high sticker prices by pointing to battery costs or limited production capacity. The Chinese rival had shown that scale and vertical integration could crush costs. Boardrooms debated whether to chase BYD's model or to abandon mass-market EVs altogether. Some argued for focusing only on trucks and SUVs. Others whispered about pulling out of the EV race entirely. The truth was cruel. The longer they delayed, the further BYD pulled ahead. Every quarter meant hundreds of thousands of additional BYD cars on the road, collecting data and spreading brand loyalty. For Tesla, the shock was personal. For legacy automakers, it was existential. But governments hate surprises even more than CEOs. Policy whiplash. When industries stumble, politics rushes in. In Washington and Brussels, lawmakers scrambled to shield domestic automakers from what they framed as unfair competition. Tariffs were proposed, subsidies debated, and election year rhetoric sharpened. American candidates promised to defend jobs against Chinese dumping, while European officials hinted at stricter import duties. In China, meanwhile, officials doubled down on support for BYD and its peers, seeing them as global champions who could project influence far beyond cars. The clash was not only about vehicles. Charging standards became a new battlefield. Tesla had pushed its North American charging standard as the industry norm, opening its superchargers to rivals. Yet BYD's independent 1,000-kilowatt network complicated the picture. Should regulators force compatibility? Should nations block foreign chargers from dominating domestic highways? These questions turned technical plugs into geopolitical weapons. Trade negotiators warned that this clash could spiral into a broader economic conflict. If tariffs escalated, retaliation from Beijing could hit agriculture, technology, and finance. Suddenly, what began as an EV price war threatened to reshape entire trade relationships, pulling ordinary consumers and workers into the fallout. For consumers, the noise was confusing. Would a car bought today be locked out of tomorrow's network? Would tariffs raise prices just as electric vehicles became affordable? The uncertainty only underscored BYD's advantage. Its vertical integration insulated it from many of these shocks. While politicians bickered, BYD kept building. Meanwhile, the loudest pushback didn't come from Washington. It came from the factory floor. Labor fights back. In the heart of manufacturing towns, union halls filled with anger. Workers who once believed the EV transition meant secure jobs now saw plants idled and contracts renegotiated. As BYD shipped cheap cars into global markets, Western factories struggled to match prices without slashing wages or shifting production overseas. The fear of offshoring grew louder, and union leaders warned of an industrial hollowing out that would devastate communities already scarred by globalization. Political backlash followed. Cheap cars delighted consumers, but they terrified workers. Lawmakers faced a dilemma: protect local jobs through tariffs and risk higher prices, or embrace lower-cost imports and face electoral punishment from displaced workers. In countries like the United States, where the car industry is woven into national identity, the issue became more than economics. It became cultural. Was buying a BYD an act of progress or an act of betrayal? Union leaders began framing the EV transition as a betrayal rather than a promise. They argued that politicians had sold workers a dream of green prosperity only to hand the rewards to foreign factories. This narrative gained traction quickly, turning economic anxiety into a populist rallying cry. For Tesla, labor pressure mounted as well. Even if its vehicles were still seen as premium, price wars forced it to consider deeper cuts and more automation. Every decision had consequences for thousands of employees. The social contract between automakers and workers was fraying, and unions prepared for fights not seen in decades. And for Wall Street, the scoreboard had completely changed. The new scoreboard? By the end of 2025, investors no longer spoke of Tesla and BYD as merely car makers. They were platforms, ecosystems that stretched from vehicles to charging, from household batteries to national grids. Analysts began valuing BYD not on cars sold, but on the integrated energy system it controlled. Each seagull on the road was not just a car. It was a node feeding data into software, a customer tied to home storage, a potential user of the charging empire. Tesla still held powerful cards. Its megapacks dominated utility storage in several regions. Its software stack was refined, and its brand carried unmatched recognition. Yet the narrative shifted. The question was no longer whether Tesla could outsell BYD in cars, but whether it could defend its status as the central operating system of energy and mobility. In that contest, scale and integration mattered more than style. Wall Street analysts who once spoke of Tesla as untouchable now penciled BYD into growth forecasts that stretched across continents. The market saw not two rivals fighting for car sales, but two empires clashing over the future of infrastructure. Investors understood that whoever controlled sockets, grids, and homes would control the 21st century. Because the next announcement won't be about a car, it'll be about who owns the socket. They told you this was just about cars, but now you see, it's about power, control, and the future you'll wake up to tomorrow. BYD's rise isn't a headline, it's a shift that will decide jobs, prices, even the freedom to move. Tesla may have sparked the revolution, but the battlefield has changed. So here's your choice. Watch from the sidelines or stay ahead of the curve. Hit subscribe, share this with someone who still thinks it's just cars, and buckle up. Because the next revelation isn't years away. It's already unfolding, and you can't afford to miss it.